Hello everyone, and welcome to week 2 of Poisonous Plants Week. I would be doing more of this video work outside, but we are getting a lot of rain this spring and it is fairly cold. So we are inside for this one. I will try to get more outdoor videos going as the spring moves on, but for now, bear with me. So we had a few different plant families that we were talking about for this week. And the first one is the Solanaceae, or the nightshade family. Now, the nightshade family, it kind of, for me, I have a gestalt with it. So when I see it, I kind of realize, oh, this is nightshade. It pops out well. But if you are learning the plant family, there are 5 united petals, 5 stamen, and then the center of that flower is a pointed center or unified carpels. So it looks almost like an arrow or sometimes like a funnel. So you can think of a petunia flower being more of that funnel-shaped flower, and tomato or potato blossom or pepper blossoms have more of that arrow shape. So in this plant family, we have some very poisonous and toxic and medicinal plants, and we also have some edible plants. So tomatoes, eggplants, potatoes, tomatillos, chilies, known as peppers, not black peppers, but chili peppers, and ground cherries are some of the edible members of this plant family. But you can already tell from those plants that perhaps you wouldn't want to eat all of the plants in this family. Tomatoes, the leaves are, you never eat tomato leaves. Eggplant leaves you don't eat. Potatoes, you don't eat them raw or when the skins are green. You want to cut those off. They have an alkaloid called solanine in them. So you can already tell that there's some potential issue with this family in terms of its edibility. Now, in Europe, there are no edible native members of the Solanaceae family, and when tomatoes were first brought over to Italy from Peru, they weren't eaten for something like 100 years because the Italians didn't know of any edible nightshades. So they saw this flower and were like, ooh, we're not going to eat that one. So there are lots of alkaloids in this plant family. One of the more ones that we all might know of is one called nicotine, and nicotine is found in tobacco. It's an incredibly toxic and also incredibly addicting alkaloid. People use it for many reasons, and one of which is to cope with trauma. So I've never really used nicotine, but from what I have heard, it allows you to relax on the inside while still keeping up kind of a barrier to the external world. So some people can use it to cope with trauma or things where they really need to feel relaxed on the inside but still hold up a strong barrier to the world around them. E-cigarettes are something that are coming into play nowadays, and nicotine is just as bad in e-cigarettes as they are in tobacco and regular cigarettes. I'm sure there will be plenty of health issues that we see associated with e-cigarette use, plus the amount of e-waste that is a result of them. Also, with most addictions, people are using addictions to divert addressing other problems. So my mom ran a stop smoking program for a while, and she realized that when people would stop smoking, they would then have to deal with the psychological issues they were, or they kind of like reverted back to their emotional progress that they had when they started smoking. So you had these, 40-year-old women stopping smoking who were then acting like 13-year-olds in terms of emotional state because that's when they started smoking. Anyway, that's a long tangent. Nicotine is found in tobacco. You also have other alkaloids like scopolamine, atropine, hyoscyamine. So there's a lot of these amines, words ending in I and E, that are alkaloids. So some of the members of this family: Atropa belladonna, deadly nightshade. This plant is native to Europe, and it contains hyoscyamine and atropine, which causes nervous system stimulation followed by depression. This plant is hallucinogenic and hypnotic, and also lethal in certain doses. So, not a plant to mess with. Small doses have the opposite effect of large doses. That has to do with the different alkaloids affecting different parts of the nervous system. Another plant in this family is Datura or Jimson weed, also known as Jamestown weed. This plant has that cone-shaped petunia flower, very large. You might recognize the seed pods. They're very spiky. The leaves are very large, and this is a plant native to North America, but that kind of has spread from the Southwest. It's called Jimson weed because in the Jamestown colony, there were some soldiers who accidentally ate the leaves of this plant, and for 11 days after that, they were quarantined because they were acting like monkeys and just like hallucinating and really just going nuts. And at the end of this 11 days, they came to and had no recollection of what had happened for the last 11 days. So a very potent plant. The seeds are used externally as a salve for nerve pain, but you would only use it on 1 square foot of skin. Otherwise, you start to get some of those hallucinogenic effects. Henbane, Hyoscyamus niger, is an introduced plant. It's sedative, hypnotic, and analgesic, so it can help with pain, nerve pain specifically. And it's also specific for spasms and pain associated with spasms. It's sedative and sleep-inducing, and used to be used to bring down mania. So people were at a really kind of frenetic, high energy level. It was used to relax that. There are a lot more uses for this plant, but again, this is one of those toxic botanicals, can be lethal. If you are interested more on that, there are certain courses you can take. Nicotiana, tobacco. This is a sacred plant. It grows in very, very rich soil and is often used by various Native American tribes as an offering when harvesting plants or when doing certain ceremony. Nicotine, as I said before, is contained within this plant, a toxic alkaloid that is actually lethal in very small doses if it's concentrated. So with those e-cigarettes and those vape pens, that the oil in there can be really, really toxic if consumed in large quantities. And petunias, a common horticultural plant, again, has that more funnel-shaped flower. Next plant family, Euphorbiaceae. You'll get an eye for this. The stalks, when you break them, exude a milky sap. That's not the only plant that does that, but that's one of the key characteristics of this plant. The flowers are often pretty indescript. They have 0 to 5 petals and 5, 10, or numerous stamens. There aren't that many varieties or that many species in the northeast of this plant, but in the southwest there are a lot of them. They can look kind of like cacti, big succulent plants. Some of the more notable edible members are manioc, which tapioca is made from its root. And then this is an edible, but Mexican jumping bean is in this family. The jumping bean is from a moth who lays its egg in there, and then the larva has quick jerky movements which causes the bean to jump. Some of these plants, the milk can cause dermatitis, so if you get it on your skin, it can cause kind of a rash. Castor oil is made from ricinus or ricinus, not sure the pronunciation, but castor bean is a common plant that you'll see in garden areas. It's also all over the place in warmer parts of this country, used as an ornamental, but the oil is very useful for various applications. One of the ones that we want to know for our foraging explorations is Euphorbia maculata. This looks similar to purslane, which is a kind of creeping, crawling plant on the ground with red stalk and big leaves. Purslane has much more succulent or thicker leaves, and it also doesn't exude that milky sap. So if you are looking at purslane, you want to make sure that it is not exuding a milky sap. Otherwise, that could be this euphorbia, and I haven't tasted it, but I'm pretty sure it tastes pretty caustic pretty quickly. So you probably wouldn't eat too much of it, but make sure that purslane does not have milky sap, because that is not purslane. Next family, the poppy family. This is a really interesting family in terms of toxicity and medicine. I think I first learned about this medicinal use of this plant when watching Wizard of Oz, and they go into a poppy field and say, poppies, and all fall asleep. This family contains some of the species that were used to create morphine, heroin, codeine, and opium. Those are all on Papaveraceae somniferum, or opium poppy. So very, very potent family in terms of that, the alkaloidal contents. These plants have alternate leaves, often with milky sap, and 4, 8, or 12 petals with numerous stamens, and the ovary is in the middle of that flower and often pretty prominent, so it's a very large, almost like a big ball in the middle of that flower. Some of the notable members, Chelidonium majus is a poppy that's widely naturalized here. I just learned this in reading for this little video that it's not native to this country. My teacher Matt Wood uses it sometimes as a bitter, but it can be it can cause issues when used in large quantities. I don't know how to pronounce this, but Eschlosia is California poppy. Now, California poppy we use for kind of a sleep aid. If you take too much of it, you can get kind of groggy the next day because it'll still be in your system. But good as more of a mild sedative. It's not nearly as strong as opium poppy, so it's not going to become addictive, but can help with sleep. Papaver, the genus, you have that Papavera somniferum. That is your opium poppy, where you get morphine, heroin, codeine, and opium. But Papaver is the poppy, that's where they get poppy seeds from as well. So a lot of these plants do have edible seeds. Sanguinaria, bloodroot, is a spring ephemeral. I don't recommend the use of this plant much nowadays because it is that spring ephemeral and can easily be over-harvested. But it is used as a red dye, and is also used for skin cancer. So they would actually use it to burn out the tumor of skin cancer. So pretty intense application for that plant. But it's a beautiful flower, an earlier flower, and the leaf is really easy to recognize. It's this almost circular leaf, but then it has really deep lobing in the top of the leaf. If you check out a picture of it, you may have seen it recently. And then there's the subfamily of the bleeding heart subfamily within this family. Some of the members are bleeding hearts, which are common ornamental and horticultural plants. Dutchman's breeches and squirrel corn are two notable spring ephemerals. They have very feathery leaves and these beautiful, really unique flowers, one of which looks like a big thing of corn, like a little corn kernel, and the other one looks like some pantaloons on a flower. Corydalis is another genus within this subfamily. Corydalis Yanhuso is used as kind of an analgesic sedative, and according to Thomas Elpel, some of the other members of this genus are used similarly. It's very worthwhile Asian or Chinese medicinal, so it would be interesting to look to see if some of the native Corydalises can be used similarly. Next plant family, Rubiaceae. This doesn't really have many toxic members of its family. Some of them have high levels of coumarins, which can be almost too blood thinning or can cause phytosensitivity in large doses. But reading back on this, I wouldn't be concerned about this family, but it's a good family to know. Some of you may have drank this family for breakfast. Coffee is in this family, and coffee contains the alkaloid caffeine. Caffeine promotes adrenaline and also blocks your body from sensing the byproduct of ATP consumption. So when you move, you're burning ATP, and that produces a byproduct. Caffeine prevents your body from sensing the levels of that product, so you just don't realize that you're tired. A native source of caffeine is Ilex vomitoria, which is in the holly family, so different family, but caffeine has evolved in different families. So interesting to note that some of these very, very valuable and interesting alkaloids have evolved independently across different plant families. Some of the members of this family, Gallium, include bedstraw and cleavers. Some of you may know cleavers. It has whorled leaves and then a square stem, but it also sticks to your clothing. So it has almost like Velcro-like hairs that will stick to clothing or fur or anything like that. And the seeds will attach to animals and then get dispersed very easily. It's an introduced species, but it's very common. It's used to help with as a lymph mover and a blood mover, and to kind of dissolve hard deposits in the body. This genus, the Gallium genus, they can be edible when they're young shoots, but I would not recommend eating cleavers because of that stickiness. They can tend to kind of like scratch your throat. So only use them as a tea or as a juice. But then there's also other Galliums within this genus that are edible young, and have a lot of other interesting ethnobotanical uses that you can read up on. Michella, partridge berry, Michella repens is the one around here. It's a small plant that just kind of crawls along the forest floor, and it has an edible berry that's very prominent and red, but it's flavorless. But fun to eat, a nice little nibble if you're in the woods. Borage family, Boraginaceae. This plant family used to be a fairly common edible and medicinal, but it has pyrrolizidine alkaloids. Now, pyrrolizidine alkaloids are a group of alkaloids that are damaging to the liver long term. So people didn't really know as much about this alkaloid until we were able to do epidemiological studies or studies of large populations. And they noticed that in populations that were eating bracken fern, they were fine up until about 40, and then there started to be very high rates of liver cancer. So they started looking back, figuring out what is a common plant, or what is something that's going on in this whole group, and they finally figured out bracken was a common denominator, and then within bracken you had this pyrrolizidine alkaloid that was causing issues over long term. So the borage family, some of these plants do contain high levels of PAs or pyrrolizidine alkaloids, so not recommended for long-term use, so you can probably have a little bit of a nibble. They have 5 sepals, 5 united petals, and 5 stamens, so kind of plant of 5s. The leaves are simple, alternate, and hairy, and they tend to be pretty thick. So if you see a couple of these plants, you can start to get an eye for them. Comfrey and borage are 2 of the main ones that I think of when I think of this plant family. Borage, traditionally used as an edible for flowers and young leaves, but again, pyrrolizidine alkaloids. Mertensia, or bluebells, really beautiful spring ephemeral, and you'll just find carpets of blue in the woods. I went hiking up to Buttermilk Falls recently with my partner and my brother and his wife, and found amazing patches of bluebells, so it really brings some nice light to the spring woodland. Symphytum comfrey. Comfrey is a plant that some people plant in their gardens because it's a dynamic accumulator. These deep roots bring up a lot of minerals. Once you plant it, you can't get rid of it. I would not recommend planting it. I would recommend asking around for someone who has it already, harvesting it from their garden if you're going to use it. It heals wounds very quickly and almost too quickly, so it can kind of like heal things over without allowing the body time to clean it out. But we use the root of comfrey in skin and joint balms to help with that healing. And since you're just using it on the surface, we're not really concerned about those pyrrolizidine alkaloids. And then there's a subfamily within the borage family called the waterleaf subfamily. This has one specific species that I see all over the place called hydrophyllum or waterleaf, and it's a common woodland edible. Waterleaf was recently put under borage family. I'm not sure about the pyrrolizidine alkaloid content of these, but I want to think, but I'm not entirely sure, that they wouldn't have PAs because they were grouped into an entirely separate family, so there would be some evolutionary distinction that would have them be a little bit separate. So that's it for our poisonous plants weeks. Poisonous plant weeks, yes, we had 2 of them. So if you have any questions, please get in touch. Yeah, keep on posting pictures, keep on sharing pictures. Things are starting to come out a lot more now, even though we have a little bit of cold rain. Spring is fully underway. So hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, please let me know. And also please fill out the doodle poll with the new phone call times. And then also we can figure out a time to do the group video chat.